Where are you? So tell me, are you too far over?
No, I'm right there. You're gonna be right next to me.
Oh, I was muted that whole time.
Hey, Bruce.
Hi, Warren. How are you?
I'm well.
It's
Good.
good to see you.
Very nice. All right, everybody. So we're gonna get started. Forgive me, I'm gonna mute everybody but myself and Cantor Lauren. There we go. And we're gonna put us onto the big screen here. And Cantor Lauren, same thing. Okay, very nice. It's lovely to see all of you. It's lovely to be here. And to begin our service tonight, we're going to welcome our good friend Ann Silver, who's going to light and bless our Shabbat candles. You can follow along in our prayer books on page 120. And Ann, we just have to ask you to unmute, so you just have to click yes there. Okay, beautiful candlesticks. I love it.
Thank you.
Very lovely. So again, everybody can join on their own, page 120. And Ann, thanks so much for doing this.
My pleasure. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadligneh shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Amen. 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 And thank you so much. Shabbat shalom. We get to see the candles for the rest of the service. Is great, but we'll let you sit back down, as it were, and we're going to turn over to the cantor, who will start us off on page 128. We'll turn now to page 130, L'chun Ranana, at the very top of the page.
L'chun Ranana, l'Adonai, Nariya, l'tzorishenu, nekarma fanav, metoda, bizmirot, nariya lo, yai, 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 yai,
Turn now to page 131, Shiru Ladonai.
Shiru Adonai, Haaretz. Shiru Adonai, Shir Chadash. Shiru Adonai,
We'll turn now to page 132 at the very bottom, or Zarua. We turn now to page 134, Zamru Adonai, at the very top of the page.
Zamru Adonai bechino, bechino bekol zimra. 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 Zamru Adonai bechino, bechino bekol zimra.
Turn to page 135, Romamu, the middle of the page, third paragraph down from the top in Hebrew.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'yishtachachu le'or kodesho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'yishtachachu le'or kodesho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Romemu Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'yishtachachu le'or kodesho.
Turn now to page 138 for L'chadodi, and a reminder, we'll do the first, second, fifth, and ninth paragraphs.
L'chadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat mekabela. 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 Shan hor ve'zachor ve'dibor echad, kish v'yanu el hamnuchat. Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shemo tiferet yisrael. L'chadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat mekabela. דודי לקראת כלה, ונשבה נקבלה. לקראת שבת דרכו אחד, כי מקור הברכה, לראש מכתם נסוכה. סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, ונשבה נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ונשבה נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך ומאורי, אורי, אורי, שיר דמרי. כבוד אדוני עלי תפילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ונשבה נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ונשבה נקבלה. אורי ושלום התפלה, גם בשמחה וצהלה. תוך המוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ונשבה נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ונשבה נקבלה.
And we'll turn now to page 140.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב מאוד לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך היום, ולזמר לשמך היום. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב מאוד לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך היום, ולזמר לשמך היום. להגיד הבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות. הלב אסור מעלינו, עלי היגיון וחילון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב מאוד לאדוני, ונזמר לשמך היום, ונזמר לשמך עליון. צדיק אתה מה יפרח, כארץ בלבנון ישגה, שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו. עוד ינובו בשיבה, תשנים ברעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי, מלוא עוולתם בו.
Okay, just pause for a second. That was beautiful. That was phenomenal. I didn't know exactly what it was going to be. I just knew that Cantor Lauren had prepared something different. For those that don't know, you can give maybe a word at some other time as to where that comes from. And but this is a nusach that at least to me, it sounds very much like a lot of the melodies that I grew up with at home. So I wonder of the Litvak connection. But really, that was phenomenal, and I think I would love for that to come back again if we can.
Absolutely.
Okay, sorry for that interlude, everybody. I just had to say. We're going to turn to the Chatzi Kaddish now on page 144.
יתגלה ויתקדש מרבה, ואלמד יברח ירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בן ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמרה במברך לעולם על מעמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירם בעלמא ויאמרו אמן.
We turn now to page 146 for the Baruch Hu.
Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed Le'olam Va'ed. Yai 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 yai
We'll read now together on the top of page 149. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני המריב הרבים. אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אתה תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו למדת על כן אדוני אלוהינו ושוכנו וקומנו נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו מאורך ימינו ובהם נגב יומם ולילה מאהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני
Now on top of page 154. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך וקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך, ובשעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם emet. Read together now on the top of page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it's eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Mi Chamocha is on page 158. We'll turn now to the top of page 161, Hashkivenu.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be your shelter from life's storm. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu, Leshalom. Ve'ha'amidenu, Shomreinu lechaim. Ufrot aleinu, Sukkot shomecha. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu, Leshalom. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm.
Turn now to page 162, the very top of the page, Vishamru.
Shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת, את תורתם בריתותם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת, את תורתם בריתותם. Beini uvein bnei Israel oti leolam v'shamru bnei Israel et hashabat לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריתותיהם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריתותיהם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריתותיהם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריתותיהם.
In a moment, the cantor will help us to begin the Amidah on page 164, and then we'll continue silently in an ever-evolving attempt to try to make sure that this experience is accessible for everyone in their own way. We don't want to rush the Amidah, nor do we have the ability to wait forever. So we're trying to balance things out as best as we can. So we're going to give some time tonight. It may run a little bit longer for some, not enough for others. What I would suggest is if you've finished early, take this as an opportunity. If you're next to somebody, give them a hug. If not, call somebody, give them a virtual hug in that way. Open up the Siddur, walk around your room, spend that time in a meaningful kind of way. And if we finish before you do, and you're still continuing, the tradition actually is to continue at your own pace, and then to catch up to us as best as you are able. So as always in our temple, we try to strike the balance when we can, but we always begin together with one voice. So Cantor Lauren will help us again start on 164, and then please use this time to find the prayer of your own heart.
Adonai sefatai tiftach, v'yagi tfilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Ay, 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 יהי לרצון יפי ויום ליבי יהי לרצון יפי ויום ליבי לפניך Adonai Tzuri, Adonai Tzuri Le'ani, Adonai Tzuri, Adonai Tzuri Le'ani. Yehi leratzon yimefi eyol libi Yehi leratzon yimefi eyol libi lefanach.
As we turn to page 371 for our Misha Berach tonight, before I read our list, I'll invite those at home who would like to share names. By all means, please add them to our chat or simply hold their names in your hearts and minds. And in our community tonight, we are thinking of Samuel Moskowitz, the Gluckman family, Audrey Lubo, Evie Romano, Chaim Leib, Andrew Edelman, Bob Posner, Joyce Weinberg, Rick Gold, Stu Pollock, Jane London, Phyllis Silver, Catherine Guarino, Emunah Chaba, Sandra Furman, Raina Walsh, Deirdre Klein, Stephanie Skitt, Judy Stern, Miriam Cornfield, Roz Brody, Chana Ruth Bat Sarah, Marlise Silverberg, Susan Spruce, Fagel Tzipora Bat Elisheva Bat Sarah, Richard Gambino, Michelle Sawicki, Idol Basha Bat Yitzchak, Tzvi Menachem Ben Chaim, Rivka Bat Devora, Amy and Gavin Tucker, Janice Kurz, David Dowling, Neil Elliott and Eileen Rosen, Israel Ben Yitzchak, Ben Sion Ben Moshe, Lorraine Danis, Buddy Kossoff, Shelley Newmark, David Kyle Klotman, Rivka Bat Rachel, Sarah Bat Chana, Moshe Eliezer Ben Sivia, Peretz Ben Yehuda, and Leah Bat Naomi. As we think of all of them and those that were mentioned in the chat, we'll turn to Cantor Lauren, who will lead us in the Misha Berach again on page 371.
Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. And let us say Amen.
Thank you, Cantor. We'll give you a little bit of a break from the spotlight. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So I've been thinking a great deal, certainly over the last few months, last few weeks in particular, last week specifically, again, sort of trying to figure out how to find a way out of the miasma that we find ourselves surrounded by, and one that seems to end up in a cyclical series of arguments that go nowhere. And so as tendency, rabbis, right, we go to our tradition and we try to see, is there something that that can help us, to guide us in some form or the other. And so the logical place to begin when thinking about argument or disagreement or debate or whatever it resembles these days, the logical place to begin in our tradition is with something that's called a machloket, which may be a very familiar phrase to most of you, maybe less to some of you. So I want to introduce it as an idea and where it initially kind of comes from and gains its prominence. And then I want to try to take it a little bit of a step further. So for those that may be on the call that were in our Pirkei Avot class this morning, this is a source for it, not the only, but the main source in which it starts to appear in the 5th chapter and 17th Mishnah. And it says as follows: Kol machloket shehi l'shem shamayim sofa lehitkayem. That every machloket, which we'll translate for now as a dispute or an argument or a debate, that is for the sake of heaven, in the name of heaven, it is destined to endure. It's destined to endure. V'she'ena l'shem shamayim ein sofa lehitkayem. And its antithesis, anything that is not l'shem shamayim, not for the sake of heaven or in its heaven's name, will fail to endure. So the rabbis then say, Ezo hi machloket shehi l'shem shamayim. What kind of example can you give of a machloket l'shem shamayim, a disagreement for the sake of heaven? Zo machloket Hillel v'Shammai. That these are the prime example is the example of the disagreements, the debates, and the arguments between the rabbis Hillel and Shammai, who are one of the great pairs, the great zugot of the Mishnaic, pre-Mishnaic period, that form a significant basis of the Mishnaic arguments between rabbis, in which Hillel often 98% of the time, 95% of the time wins the argument, Shammai less so. However, they are a representation of this concept of machloket in our tradition. And now the antithesis, v'she'ena l'shem shamayim, zo machloket Korach v'chol adato. That the example of its antithesis is the example of Korach. For those that maybe don't remember the story, in the Torah we have a story of an insurrection that takes place in which Korach and a group of followers challenge Moshe and Aaron's leadership, and ultimately that challenge fails quite terribly, and they and all of their family and friends are ultimately destroyed. So our basis, really, the rabbis again tend to give us kind of extremes of examples. The best possible example, apparently, in our tradition of this idea of disagreement, machloket as we will call it, is really about Hillel and Shammai and the way that they interact with each other, and its antithesis again is Korach. So the challenge is really we have a couple of things that we need to go a little deeper here to understand, because even with these examples, we don't really get to a place where I think we can internalize and ultimately manifest what this is really all about. So the first thing that we have to do is really address what is l'shem shamayim? What is this idea of arguing for the sake of heaven, in the name of heaven? And really, can we think of other kinds of examples that perhaps will drill us down a little bit further? So as always, whenever you're stuck with something in our tradition, we're very lucky in that we have thousands of years of commentators up to this very day, people who are trying to help us to understand what's going on. The classic commentator on Pirkei Avot is Ovadia mi Bartanura, a rabbi from Italy, if you couldn't tell from his name. And so he explains a couple of really important pieces here, which then I'll go a little deeper and further into. So the first thing he says, right, this every argument that is for the sake of heaven's name, or l'shem shamayim, is destined to endure. Its end is to endure, meaning that it will stand the test of time, it will stand the test of challenges and otherwise. So that is to say, right, that the parties to the argument, okay, that's his clarification, not just the argument itself, but the parties to the argument are destined to endure and not to perish. As with the arguments between Hillel and Shammai, despite all the years in which they disagreed with each other, neither they nor their students ever perished from the process. However, in the case of Korach and his congregation, every single one of them ultimately lost their life. In other words, an easy way to distinguish between an argument that is l'shem shamayim and an argument that is not is, does the outcome of said argument lead to violence and ultimately to the taking of life, right, to death and to destruction? If you're having an argument in which the end result is violence and destruction, by definition, it cannot be l'shem shamayim. It cannot be for the sake of heaven. And even when it is forceful, and Hillel and Shammai go after each other in many cases, they are certainly no fast friends in many regards, but they are always able to keep, and very importantly, to demonstrate for their students how to have an argument and a disagreement with someone who disagrees and has a different perspective than them without it leading to the inevitable things that we tend to see, right? Which is the taking up of arms, the incitement to violence, and the ultimate end, which is violence in and of itself. Now he goes another step further, and he further explains, an argument which is for the sake of heaven. Here is another distinction, a way to distinguish between those that are and those that aren't. Ask the purpose behind the argument. What's the intention behind it? What are we trying to do and achieve by having whatever this argument may be? And so Bartanura explains, when it's L'Shem Shamayim, for the purpose of heaven, the aim is sought that they arrive ultimately at truth. Okay, and this is why the choice of Hillel and Shammai is such a great example, because ultimately that's what their debates were about. Trying to understand what was the right way, right? What was the way that God most wanted us to behave on any particular issue of which they were debating. That was the crux of their argument. It was about ultimately trying to uncover quote unquote truth. Defining truth will be for another night, okay? But let's say for tonight's purposes, what they mean by truth is, again, what is the message of the Torah in this particular instance? What is God's mitzvah or instruction for us? They find a way to, again, arrive at that conclusion at the end, and that is the driving purpose between them for the argument, okay? But when it is the opposite, when it is not for the sake of heaven, it is, as Bartanura says, because the desire is to achieve power. And in fact, not just to achieve power, but the love of contention. And its end will ultimately not endure as a result of it. As we found in the example of Korach and his congregation, that their aim and ultimate intent was to achieve honor and power, and ultimately the opposite was achieved. So here we understand a little bit better what it is that the Mishnah is trying to teach us, and why Hillel and Shammai and why Korach are the examples. Because we are trying to understand that somehow or another, as human beings, we are meant to argue with each other. We are meant to debate with each other. This is not a sort of outside allowance. Within Judaism, it is built into the idea of who we are. There are many midrash, but one that is very commonly quoted is the idea that when Moses went up to Sinai and got the Torah, God explained 49 different positive ways to understand a piece of law and 49 negative ways. In other words, giving equal amounts of arguments in both directions. And the instruction is that in every generation, we are meant to debate these issues and to come to our own conclusions. But the only way that we can have those kinds of debates where we actually move forward, where our purpose is to find a greater truth, to ultimately bring out a betterment of society or of each other, of our communities, process matters. Okay, process matters a great deal. Intent matters a great deal. Simply yelling at each other is not an argument, l'shem shamayim. It's not even really an argument. It is an expression of ego. When we cease to be able to have conversations with each other about even the simplest matters, forget even Washington, right? Forget politics for a second. Just think of your own homes and your own family, your own friends, right? Think about how many times we end up in a circumstance in which we argue over nothing, literally nothing. Okay, we waste our breath, we waste our time on things that divide us for no particular purpose. And I think the answer to how to respond to that is actually in the word itself, in the word machloket. And for whatever reason, after years and years and years of looking at this word, it just never occurred to me to look at its root. Okay, its root in Hebrew is chelek. Chelek means a portion. Okay, lechalek means to divide something, to separate things. One can look at that word and think it in the negative, right? To divide things, we oftentimes assume is a negative concept. If we look at it a little bit differently, though, which is to assure that in our conversations, we are giving appropriate portions to each other, space for each other to articulate our positions and our thoughts on things. No one is dominating the space. No one is silencing the other person, but we are making space for the argument to actually take place. That is Hillel and Shammai. Okay, that it's very important to understand that in our tradition, we record the minority opinion not by accident, by purpose. Okay, Hillel may have won many of the arguments, but Shammai's teachings are still relevant and important. They are recorded. Regardless of who, quote unquote, succeeds in the end of the halakha, the positions are there. Their model is the model that we need to redevelop in ourselves. We have to figure out a way to portion out the opportunities to have real and serious debate about substantive matters and be okay with disagreeing about them. But we have to always be conscious, going back to our original teaching, about not wasting our time on things that are not actually worthwhile arguments. Okay, there is also a red line. There are places in which things are not acceptable to be discussing and things are completely beyond. right? We also have a need and a necessity to determine what are going to be the substantial kinds of arguments that we can have, the substantive kind of arguments that move us forward as a society, as a culture, as people, as a country, and to make sure that we are going to put to the side the things that are a waste of our time and have only one purpose, which is exactly what's described of Korach, which is to seek power, to seek a love of the contention itself, right? To worship the actual argument as opposed to seeing the argument as a vehicle to getting to a better place. And I think that's what the term machloket teaches us. I think that's what this is really all about. And I think now more than ever, we need to go back to our own tradition and look for some guidance about how to get ourselves, as I said, out of the quagmire in which we find ourselves. There is a tremendous amount of work to be done, make no mistake, but it can begin, and it can begin again by looking for models of behavior. And we have some excellent ones in our tradition, which I hope that we will pay closer attention to. So with that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. Hopefully you will have a Shabbat in which there will not be too many machlokot in your homes and in your families, but should they arise, you can quote the rabbi and hopefully work in a positive direction together. So with all that, I will bring Cantor Lauren back to the stage, and we will turn to page 586 at the very bottom of the page, Aleinu L'Shabeach. Aleinu L'Shabeach L'Adon HaKol, Latet Gedula Le'otzer Breshit, Shelo Asanu Kigoye Haratzot, Velo Samanu Kemishpechot Adama, Shelo Sam Chelkenu Kahem, Vegor Aleinu Kechol Hamonam, Vanachnu Korim, Umishtachavim Umodim Lifnei Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're now on page 591. V'nehemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. I'll now invite those who are in mourning or observing yard sites to rise in body or spirit as we think of those who've passed in our community first in recent months. Miles Ambrose, Fred Eber, Nancy Fisher, Saul Fisher, Edwin Friedman, Sandra Friedman, Lucy Gladstone, Lois Herr, Phyllis Katz, Laura Kurz, Madge Judith Parcher, Steve Popkin, Vera Shaps, Norma Small, Marjorie Weinberg Berman, and Ann Weiss. We also marked the yard sites that occurred during the last week for Larry Abelman, Alvin Abrams, Sophia Ballin, George Baskind, Shifra Bat Rav Aryeh, Harry Birkin, Ignatz Brill, Carol, Julian Coleman, Estelle Eagle, Jimmy Ernst, Ray Fisher, Duv Halpern, Harold Harlan, Jeff Harris, Leo Cohn, Carol Kossoff, Gail Ann Lowe Maidman, Dorothy Marks, Ethel Miller, Max Moskowitz, Randolph Oliphant, Shana Protas, Bertha Potashik, Nettie Rosenstein, Erwin Rossick, Richard Schultz, Rebecca Schwartz, Barbara Senft, Esther Siegelwax, Anna Silberman, Leo Steinberg, Tina Poland, Frederica Bar Tobias, Louis Udell, and Martha Zimmerman. If there's anyone for whom you're remembering tonight that we didn't mention and you feel comfortable, please mention their names in the chat or simply hold them in your hearts. As we turn to page 598, and the mourners join me in reciting the Kaddish, again at the very top of the page. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabah, be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'gala uv'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabah mevarach le'alam le'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha barichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing. And Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm still here, I promise. And now it's my honor to welcome up our board member, secretary of our board, silver polisher extraordinaire, I must tell you. She saves us every year, and many times a year in which nobody ever sees her do. Just all around incredible person, Janet Grossman, and her wonderful husband, Carl, who is there as well. We're going to ask you to unmute, and you're going to give us the announcements tonight. Okay? It'll take 1 second. Don't worry. We'll get it. There you go.
Okay.
You're all set. Okay? And Janet, thank you again for doing this. This is really a treat.
Okay, it's a pleasure. Here are the weekly announcements for February 5th. Shabbat morning service will be live streamed tomorrow at 10 a.m. Join us on our website, YouTube channel, or Facebook page. Archived versions will be available for viewing shortly after each service ends. Then join us for Torah study at 12 p.m. using a women's Torah commentary with Margaret Bromberg facilitating. Nida Mitzvah is on Monday at 11:30 a.m. If you're interested, email AndreaFagan41@gmail.com for the Zoom link. Hebrew school is at 4 p.m. The Social Justice Committee will meet virtually at 5 p.m. and Mussar practice is at 7 p.m. This is all on Monday. On Tuesday, Lorraine Pepper brings us another fun art workshop, this time on embroidered peace doves at 5 p.m. Materials are $8 and the project is suitable for ages 12 and up. Rabbi Dan's class on Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel and the Prophets is on Wednesday at 12 p.m. and the B'nai Mitzvah class meets that day at 4 p.m. There will be a board meeting that evening at 7:30 p.m. on Zoom. On Friday at 9 a.m., Rabbi Dan teaches his class on Pirkei Avot. Heads up for the following Sunday, February 14th at 2 p.m., when we'll virtually welcome back our previous Rebbitzin, Dasi Berkowitz, to talk about her new book, Becoming a Soulful Parent, A Path to the Wisdom Within. The Social Justice Committee's Part 2 of their Shared Legacies panel discussion is on February 17th. A members-only forum on coping and resilience during COVID is on February 18th. And our Purim celebration with the return of our humor group's hilarious Purim Star Wars is on February 25th. Check out these and all other programs in our weekly e-blasts and on our website calendar. If you're not getting our emails, please let the temple office know. We welcome you to join us after services tonight for a virtual Oneg Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom, Janet. That was great. Boy, you might have to do this every week. That was really fantastic. Wonderful. Really, in all truth, Janet, Carl, thank you so much for everything that you do. Even in a virtual space, you're helping out as always, right? It feels like we're in the social hall. It's just phenomenal. So thank you. We'll let you relax now, and we'll bring Cantor Lauren back to the fore here. And we're going to have a closing song tonight, and then we'll do Kiddush, and then we'll do Onik. So what do you got for us tonight?
We're going to continue with the Yehi L'Ratzon, and we're going to add in the English this time. Yehi L'Ratzon im Levi Adonai, 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 Adonai what it yearns when you breathe. Go inside your heart and see. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be kind, be true. May they be acceptable to you, oh my rock and my redeemer.
That's beautiful. Let's turn to page 123. If you have grape juice or wine handy, you're more than welcome to join us. Again, page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'v'ratzon inchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikrae kodesh Zecher letziat Mitzrayim ki banu bacharta ve'otanu kidashta lekol hamim ve'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava u'ratzon inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. L'chaim, everyone. And let's go to gallery view. We'll let everybody unmute and wish each other a Shabbat Shalom. And to all of our friends who may be watching and streaming at home, we